So let's first look at the LRJ. So I gave this to you the other day, the first day of school, right? And we kind of sped through it. Have you used numbers 1 through 20 to kind of guide some of your annotations in your Of Mice and Men book a little bit, hopefully? Say yes. Yes. Okay, so I want to walk through a few things, and I might have you add a couple of things on here, okay? So your LRJ, your literary response journal, should convince me that you have read and thought carefully about each assigned literary work. If your understanding of the work is wrong, yet your journal clearly proves that you read or misread the work, you may well receive full credit. Your grade is based on content, what you have to say, how well you say it, your thoughts and feelings about the literature, and your explanation of the logic that led to your interpretation. Your grade is based on the following, okay? I will not penalize you for grammar and usage errors, but come on, y'all, if you're working in a Google Doc, if you're typing it, right, you can do a grammar check or do a spell check, so at least do that. But to receive credit, you must include the following in every LBJ. There are 5 things, okay? The literary work's title, properly punctuated. See your taboo list for how to do that. So on your taboo list, it tells you what to underline, what to put in italics. Underline and italics are the same thing, right? If you are typing, it's in italics. If you are writing, it's underlined, because you can't write in italics. Don't try. The writer's name, a quotation from the literary work integrated with your own sentence, properly punctuated and commented upon as necessary to show why you cited the particular passage. No quote lumps. Quote lumps for me, you might hear me call it a quote drop. For me, okay? A quote drop means I'm reading a sentence, I see a period, the next sentence starts with a quote. It's like the heavens drop down a quote on your paper, and I know nothing about where it came from. Okay? We'll talk a little bit today. If you were here last year, freshman, then you know how to embed text. And we'll work on embedding text today when we work on our example, okay? Specific references to the literary work and careful thought. Those things will get you a 5 out of 5, okay? And I'll show you what good ones look like and what some not so good ones look like, all right? After you've included the 5 musts above, you may choose any of these maybes to guide your response. I'm using these to guide where my response goes, and I'll show you how we do that today, okay? All right, so you have manhole covers, right? This is what we did yesterday, so this is our annotations from yesterday. So have that out, okay? Notice when we start writing in an LRJ for this, the back, you have the box where we're going to write it. But I want to walk you through a couple of samples, and then you're going to tell me how many points I would give this response. You ready? Some of these are pretty bad. This was one of the dumbest poems I have ever read. I mean, you may think about that, but don't say that. The guy talks about manhole covers. That's great, but who cares? It talks about long after edges. Long after ... edges. And that is true because it probably will happen. The poem overall is dumb. It also has a negative in the fact that it is hard to understand. You always have to look down and see what a word means. This was not a very good poem. Well, it's a teacher that wrote it, so beautiful handwriting, yes. Okay. Is there a title? Nope, no title. Author's name? No, the guy. Not his name. Quotation. Is there embedded text? There's embedded text here. Okay? Problem is this. I tell you I would rather you not use ellipses. Okay? Why? Because what he did is he took out all the content in between, and now I have no idea what he's talking about. Okay? So when you embed text, you have to embed it as if somebody hadn't read that passage before. Okay? And we'll talk about, I would rather you in the beginning have too long of a quote, and I'll show you how to pare it down, rather than give me the first word of like the line and then ... and the last word of the line. Okay? We can talk about that. So that doesn't really count as embedded text because I don't understand what the text is. All right? Is there anything thoughtful said about it besides it's dumb? What would you give this if we have out of 5 points? How many points would you give this? Maybe if I feel good, maybe a 1, because I'll maybe a half of 5. A half of a point over 5, because this is kind of an embedded text. Okay? But doesn't this make you feel good? You're like, I would never write that, right? Good. I like it. Okay. Let's read this one. Manhole Covers by Carl Shapiro shows that beauty can be found in everyday things if we look for it. The author compares plain, overlooked manhole covers to ancient metals or stones. He even hints that someday people or something in the future will find this rust-proof artifact. When our civilization is gone, like the Mongolians and the Mayans, those who come later will see a beauty that we overlooked. It also says that what we make shows the kind of people we are. We make everyday things beautiful without even thinking about it. Okay, let's go through the checklist. Title? Check. Author? Yes. Quotation. Here is the embedded text right here, right? Is it embedded well? So when you have text that's embedded well, your words and the author's words go together grammatically. Okay? So you will give context. So the way that we talk about it, and I'll show you today, the way that we talk about embedding text is paraphrase for me what's happening right before the quote that you're giving me. And then we'll blend those two together. Okay? Is there careful thought? Yeah. So here we give, so there's some insight. There's some insight. Okay? In TP Cast, where did this come from? From your what? Yeah. It can come from the theme. Right? So you can go to the LRJ and look at what question do you think or what number do you think that would have addressed. I might say it could address probably number 7, right? Because the manhole covers what that symbolically means. You can talk about that for the theme. I would say you could also talk about, it might also be style because you can go into style and theme there too. Okay? Good, solid response. What would I give that? 5. Easy, yes? Pretty easy. All right. Ready to write your own? Okay. So, have out your manhole covers. And we're going to write the response in the back. What does this remind you of, the LRJ from last year? A short answer question. FAQ, SAR, whatever it is, whatever it was called last year. Very similar, okay? Except for this one, the LRJ is giving you a little more options where the FAQ was very specific what you had to answer, right? But if you notice from our numbers 1 through 20 on the LRJ, you'll see that most of the time those are things that you would see on a STAR question as well, okay? So, how can we start it? In Manhole Covers by Carl Shapiro. Okay, starting there. All right, so look at your TP cast yesterday because you had to finish the end of it, right? You had to finish the end of TP cast of the poem. What were some of the themes that you guys saw? What did y'all identify in a theme? Go for it.
Everyone wants to be remembered by something, and similar to the Mayan calendar or great savage stone metals, savage calm.
Yeah.
The modern way of being remembered is a manhole cover.
Okay, good. So your theme is just the idea that everybody wants to be remembered for something, right? Okay, good. What else did y'all have? This is when everybody doesn't look at me. Ben, go for it.
I think the same thing kind of the last LRJ was about.
Okay.
About how there's beauty in the most simple objects.
Okay, good. So the idea of being remembered or finding beauty in simplicity, right? Okay, which one do we want to write about? Jacob says his, Ben says... Oh yeah, you can write yours too if you want. You want to do Ben's? Okay. So in Manhole Covers by Carl Shapiro, do we want to talk about for our LRJ the symbolism response in there, right? So that would be question number 7, right? So in Manhole Covers by Carl Shapiro, nope, don't need a comma. I hate writing this again, but I will. Manhole covers are used to, Ben, what'd you say?
Used to show that there's beauty in simple objects.
Okay. That there is beauty in simple objects, period. Easy enough, right? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a piece of notebook paper. You don't have to do this, but I want to show you how to embed text, and I like to do it. You can do it below if you want, so you can kind of see how to move it. I'm just going to do it. Actually, I guess I could do it below. Okay. Find for me, flip over in the poem. Find for me in the poem. Let's use something that the sample didn't use. Find for me in the poem a line or an example of where Shapiro wants us to see the beauty. Look in the poem, refer to a line. What would you say?
2 and 3, they were already used in the sample.
Okay. Is there anything else in there that we could use instead of those two? Bitten at the edges, strong with its cryptic American. Okay, I like that. So look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to jot down bitten at the edges. Bitten at the edges. Is there a comma? Yes. And then when you do lines of poetry, and I won't get picky right now, but when you do lines of poetry and you're writing it, you do a hash mark to show that it's a new line. And you have to do the same like capitalization. So strong with its cryptic American. Okay. So one of the things that I'm going to tell you when you choose a piece of evidence, and tell me if you had this problem last year. Sometimes when you choose a piece of evidence, when you go to write about it, you feel like you have nothing to say other than just paraphrasing what that piece of evidence means. Do you say, can everybody just say that, yes, we do that quite a bit? Okay? So here's what I'm going to tell you from the beginning, and it takes a little time to figure it out. When you choose a piece of evidence, the evidence that you choose may be correct, but if it's not what I call high dollar or valuable, you don't have anything to say about it. Does that make sense? So that's when you get into paraphrasing. So what you want to look for is you want to look for a piece of text that is deep enough that you can dig into. Like think about when we were annotating yesterday, we had to dig a little bit to the words and then look at the bigger meaning away from it. Those are the pieces that you want. Good. So looking at this, what parts could we say that we could analyze that is worth the money or the value of this text? Look at your annotations from yesterday. Like, what is it about bitten at the edges that we liked? Okay, so we're going to talk, like, that can show time passing, right? And I'm just making notes. So it's kind of an imagery, right? Okay. So it shows time passing, so that's good. So strong with its cryptic American. What do we like about that part? We said it was a little funky in its structure, right? But what do we like about it?
Sounds like it also holds like some secrets that most people can't reach.
Okay. So hold secrets that people may not understand. Okay, hold secrets that not all. Okay. That'll help us. On your LRJ, I'm going to help you do this. Do you think out of your LRJ, the hardest part is the commenting part and the careful thought part? Because wouldn't you say most of the time you get into just a paraphrase of what was just said? You just say it in different words. Okay? So here's what I want you to jot down on your LRJ. Those two things, the commenting and the careful thought, are going to explain how or why you believe whatever one you chose below is true. So your comment or your thought is going to answer the questions basically how or why that is true. And I'll show you that in a minute once we embed this text. Make sense? Okay. All right. So now that we've kind of looked at our quote, do you feel like that's a quote that has some money in it, has some depth in it that we could explain more than just summarizing? Okay. So now, bless you, now what we have to do is we have to embed it. So what's happening right before this? What is the speaker doing leading up to this? So read the couple of lines before and tell me what it means. Like, tell me what he's saying. And we would start as simply as saying the speaker does what? What is the speaker doing right before our lines that we chose?
Talking about how the manhole covers are going to last forever and outlast everything else.
Okay, so the speaker explains that manhole covers, what'd you say, will
Outlast everything else.
will outlast everything else. Okay. So, if I just mushed those two together, the speaker explains that the manhole covers will outlast everything else, bitten at the edges, strong with its cryptic American. Does that make sense? No, because it's just two ideas mushed together, right? All right, so now I have to make these two fit together. So what can I add here? I can't really take anything away from here. You may have stuff like in, let's say, of mice and men, that's a part, the first part of the sentence that you don't need, right? That you can take away. What can I add here that can lead me into this statement right there? The speaker explains that the manhole covers will outlast everything else. What can I add here to make that fit there? It's like a puzzle piece. You have to make it fit.
By stating that
Okay. Yes, I don't want to shoot you down, but I'm going to for a second. Let's try to stay away from by stating. Okay? So, what is he doing? He's showing us this, right? So, what does this show us? Bitten at the edges. So, the speaker explains that manhole covers will outlast everything else, even if they are.
Could you even say, will outlast everything else with the roughness of being bitten at the edges?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you could say outlast everything else even if they are bitten at the edges. Or what did you say?
With the roughness of being bitten at the edges.
With the roughness of being. Wait. Yes. So you can either one. Does that make sense? So pick whichever one you want, and we're going to write it up above. So now I'm going to transfer it up here. So the speaker explains that and choose whichever one you want to do, manhole covers will outlast everything else. And I'm going to go with the second one, with the roughness of being, quote, bitten, and it's capitalized, so I have to capitalize it, bitten at the edges, comma, slash, capital S, strong with its cryptic American. The period goes inside the quotation marks. There's the end. So let's read it and see how it sounds so far. In Manhole Covers by Carl Shapiro, manhole covers are used to show that there is beauty in simple objects. The speaker explains that the manhole covers will outlast everything else with the roughness of being bitten at the edges, strong with its cryptic American. Does that sound good? Holy cow, that's good. Okay, so now here's the how and the why. Okay, so notice this. We are saying that we have to prove that our evidence proves this. That there is, and I'm just going to highlight this for you guys, beauty in simple objects. Right? That's what we're trying to prove. So now what we have to do is we have to say, basically, how or why does the evidence prove that? Do you find it's always hard to write that commentary afterwards? Last year, was it called commentary? Like, did y'all use ATI last year? Is that what ATI? ATE. Explain. Okay. So for me, explaining is hard because I'm just telling you more about what I just read, right? And sometimes what that leads you into is you feel like summary, right? For me, I like to change it, and it doesn't fit into a cute word like 8. I like to change it into justify. Because now you have to justify. Now it's an argument. And when I say justify, you have to say how or why do you believe that first statement, your answer, to be true. That, for me, if you get stuck and feel yourself going into summary, stop yourself and say, okay, what am I justifying? Does that make sense? It'll take a little while for you to switch to that idea because I feel like explaining or commenting, you're just telling me more about what you just read instead of giving me something insightful. Does that make sense? Okay, so notice what we've said down here in our planning. This shows time passing, bitten at the edges. How or why is that beautiful? Do what?
Like there's the same time and age of beauty.
We do. Thank you. We do. I do. Thanks. Okay, so we could say in there, with age comes beauty. And notice I'm making notes before I kind of get in there. With age comes beauty. And the bitten at the edges shows age. So we're going to have to kind of just explain how that word bitten shows a transfer of time. Okay? Okay. So let's start with that first sentence. We could say Shapiro what are we going to say? Shapiro, I want to talk about the word bitten. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to say bitten at its edges, but
Shapiro shows timeless beauty.
Shapiro shows timeless beauty by explaining. That's not really explaining. We could probably use a better verb there.
Usage of the word bitten?
You could. We could play around with that. If you start there, I'd be okay with that. Okay? Shapiro shows timeless beauty by explaining, or by using the action. Let's do this. By using, sorry, I'm a scribbler. By using the action of biting away at the artifact, yet it still has outlasted time. Does that make sense? It's a little rough. Good place to start, though. Shapiro shows timeless beauty by using the action of biting away at the artifact, yet it still has outlasted time, outweathered time. Does that show why it's beautiful in its simplicity? I'd say yeah. Okay, so let's look at the second part. Strong with its cryptic American. It holds secrets that not everyone, not all understand. Where is the beauty in this simple thing? Where is the beauty in this idea that it's holding secrets?
Maybe like the history and the sort of thing. I'm saying that
I like where you're going. I can kind of hear it.
older things just have a lot of history behind them, and maybe that's what makes them beautiful, and it just kind of has a lot of information about the time period that it's from.
Okay, I like the time period. Okay, so
like not all history is known, and part of it's a secret because you can't uncover that just from digging.
okay, so the manhole cover holds secrets of the past through its manhole cover. Y'all are going to hate me because I'm going to scribble. The manhole cover is cryptic with its secrets of the past. yet, there's a comma in there. Its strength also reveals what? The manhole cover is cryptic in with its secrets of the past, yet its strength also reveals, you can just say, its beauty.
Or were we just focusing on the word cryptic or on cryptic America?
I think we should do, I feel like I might be covering America with the past. Secrets of maybe, instead of the, maybe our past. So then that would go to the American, the cryptic American. Yet its strength also reveals its beauty. So, a little clunky. I'll read you the last one. We could clean it up if we wanted to. All right, let me know the other one. Read that. Okay, so let's read this one first. In Manhole Covers by Carl Shapiro, manhole covers are used to show that there is beauty in simple objects. The speaker explains the manhole covers will outlast everything else with the roughness of being bitten at the edges, strong with its cryptic American. Shapiro shows timeless beauty by using the action of biting away at the artifact, yet it still has outlasted time. The manhole cover should be just singular. The manhole cover is cryptic with its secrets of our past, yet its strength also reveals its beauty. Okay, there's one. Not bad. A little wordy. I think we go through. And the other thing I want to show you is if you choose a piece of text that you feel like you start struggling with, throw the text out and choose another piece of evidence. Okay? Here's the one that we wrote first period. In his poem Manhole Covers, Carl Shapiro uses manhole covers to symbolize beauty in simple objects. Shapiro compares the artistry of medals of Khan and Mayan calendars to the effort put in to make manhole covers that are notched and whelped and pocked and smashed. The verb Shapiro chose implied the brute force that it took to create something so purposeful within society. The use of multiple conjunctions also shows the effort put in, which deserves recognition of its own dated beauty. So same answer, right? But then a different piece of text, right? Yes?
Do we have to cite it and what stanza it came from?
We would probably, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I would say you could do the line. You don't have to cite where it came from, the author, because you already did that in your answer, right? So you could cite it at the end of the line. Right now I'm not worried as much about the citing, especially because it's right there. Now if we're talking about Of Mice and Men, when you do Of Mice and Men tonight, yes, you're going to need to cite it, right? And all I need is page number, because you'll have mentioned Steinbeck in the beginning, right? And all I need is a number, like 78, not PG, not P, just 78 within parentheses.
And you want 78 where?
At the end of your piece of evidence, inside the period. And if you look on the taboo list, I think it shows you like how to cite. And if not, tomorrow it'll be okay. I'll correct some things tomorrow. Does that make sense? So, this is what you're going to do tonight. Your homework tonight is to create an LRJ over chapters 1 through 3 through Of Mice and Men. First period chose, and I agree, looking at these 1 through 20, I think for us to do our first one, it'll be easy if we all choose the same topic, right? The same number to write about, so then we kind of won't be all over the place, all right? So, first period and then second period agreed, and I'm just going to say y'all are going to agree. We're going to choose number 2 to write about tonight, because I think chapters 1 through 3 you've read enough to understand the two characters of at least Lenny and George and kind of how they work together, at least in the first 3 chapters. Okay? So tonight you are to write an LRJ. You can write it by yourself, you can write it with a partner, you can write it with up to 4 people. okay, over number 2. So what this is going to mean is you're going to need a quote, because if you are comparing or contrasting, you're going to need a quote about Lenny and a quote about George. In this point you are, because you're going to compare or contrast. Does that make sense? The other thing that I want you to recognize is when you respond to this and you say Steinbeck compares George and Lenny, you have to imply to me why he compares them. Does that make sense? Or why he contrasts them. If not, your LRJ will just say he compares them. He did this with Lenny and this with George. And then all you're doing is summarizing because you don't have anything to say.
You need a justification.
I need a justification. I need that, like, kind of that bigger idea like we got from the theme from the poem. So why would you say that Steinbeck would compare the two? Or why does Steinbeck contrast the two? And I need it short and concise in that, like, first sentence. Does that make sense to you? Okay, questions? Listen, do I expect it to be perfect tomorrow? Yes, I do. No, just kidding. No. It's not going to be perfect tomorrow. It's going to be rough. But that's okay. How I see you working on this is I see you working in Google Docs together. Okay? You can Google chat together, right? I would Google Hangout so maybe you can see each other, or be on the phone and typing at the same time. Does that make sense? If you're both in Google Doc and y'all aren't actually physically talking to each other, either on the phone or in Google Hangout, everybody's going to be making moves and you're not going to know where anything is. Okay? Does that make sense? It's going to be rough. I do not want you to spend more than probably about 30 minutes on this. Somebody needs to take the lead, right, in the conversation, and then have your friends chime in. Does that make sense? So you have to do the same thing we did here. I gave you number 2 so you know what direction you're going. You have to figure out whether you're going to compare or contrast, which one you want to look at. You have to figure out why, and then you have to figure out what 2 pieces of text you can use for both of them. Type it in a Google Doc. Tomorrow, you'll throw it up on my Apple TV. I'll say, okay, throw your groups up. You'll connect to my Apple TV. We'll throw it up there. We'll grade it. Grade somebody else's, grade somebody else's, grade somebody else's. Okay? Okay.
Should it be a certain font?
I mean, Times New Roman, I would say Times New Roman 12 points, so keep it MLA. Times New Roman 12 point, 1.5 spacing, 2 spacing, somewhere around there. MLA is 2. I don't care for tomorrow. Good? And then what we'll do is tomorrow I'll give you the box that you can write your response in, right? And then over the weekend, what you'll do Friday, Saturday, Sunday is you individually are going to write LRJ for chapters 4 through 6 and turn it into me on Monday for a grade. So we've written one together, you've seen another one, you'll write one tomorrow in a group, and then you'll do one by yourself. Good? Questions?
The one in the group we're doing tonight, right?
Yes.
We choose our own. We're responsible for choosing